Eli, the back of the end zone, and it is caught for a touchdown by Larry Donnell.
Underneath he goes, and into the end zone for the touchdown.
Stafford has it picked off.
And now, Move the Sticks with Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks.
What's up, everybody? DJ Bucky, Move the Sticks here. Buck, we're back in the chair. We have another weekend of football with all kinds of interesting things to get into today.
Yeah, nice storylines to talk to. Coming off a great weekend of competitive football, a lot of games that went into overtime. We saw the undefeated show some grit and resiliency, namely the Broncos, Falcons, and Bengals. Can't wait to talk about those squads and also some of the guys who continue to kind of rank as surprises, some of the biggest surprises in the league.
Yeah, we got a lot of ground to cover on today's episode, but first I want to swing back to something we talked about last week, and that was with the Cincinnati Bengals and specifically their quarterback, Andy Dalton. You know, I know we had this conversation about the path that Tony Romo took, where forever it was like, okay, Tony Romo shrinks in big moments, and, you know, they're not ready for prime time, just not quite good enough. And then finally, overnight, it was like, okay, we all acknowledge Tony Romo's a pretty good player. And to me, it seems like Andy Dalton and the Bengals kind of going through that same period of time and a 17-point deficit to overcome against a team that's been in the Super Bowl the last 2 years. I thought this was definitely a statement for Andy Dalton in particular.
Yeah, big statement for Andy Dalton. Especially when they fell behind by 17 points to the Legion of Boom, knowing how good that secondary is, how they really feed off of quarterbacks that are forced into throwing to the teeth of the defense. He did a great job of playing within himself, did a great job of distributing the ball to the playmakers, and made the plays when they were there to be made. I think in the past, we didn't see Andy Dalton play with this level of consistency in terms of playing high-level games consistently throughout his career. But now we're beginning to see a guy that can stack those games back to back to back to back. I'm beginning to buy into what Andy Dalton brings to the table. More importantly, I'm buying into what Hugh Jackson is doing.
Getting ready to say that.
Script it and put him in a position to be very, very successful.
Yeah, Hugh Jackson's done a phenomenal job. It wasn't all good this week, though. We had some bad. We'll get into that as well. We're going to have Coach Billick on a little bit later in the show. And for those of you just checking us out for the first time, Bucky played in the NFL. Bucky scouted in the NFL. I scouted in the NFL. 20 years combined experience. And we look at what happened the week before. We kind of analyze that on our Monday show from a personnel perspective. Then when we get to Wednesday, we'll kind of look ahead to what's coming up on the weekend, look at matchups we're intrigued by. You can get to the show, obviously, here on NFL.com, on iTunes, YouTube. Subscribe and check us out there. But we have a lot of ground to cover. Before we get to Coach Billick, who's always great, and I'm going to mention his social media again, which he's always a fun person to follow and monitor on social media. Let's swing it over to TD to let everybody know what else is coming up on the show. TD, what's up?
What's up going on, guys? In today's show, we're going to talk about Matthew Stafford. Obviously, he got benched yesterday on Sunday. We're going to talk about defensive playmakers. We got the Pats and the Packers making some plays on defense. I'm going to introduce ourselves to Dion Lewis, Gary Barnidge. These guys are making big plays before we jump into Coach Billick.
All right, we got a lot of ground to cover. Bucky, let's just jump right in on Matt Stafford. Look, you watch that game, the Lions, he throws 3 picks. He has a fumble, turnovers all over the place. Running backs fumble. I think it was 6-0 ended up being the turnover ratio in that game. You cough it up 6 times, you're going to have issues. He gets benched. At one point, so we got Orlovsky, I believe, in at quarterback, and then they handed the ball off to Zach Zenner. I mean, I felt like I was watching the East-West Shrine game, and this is an NFL football game with the Detroit Lions. What is wrong with Matt Stafford?
Turnovers. Decision-making, turnover. He doesn't value the ball. He's turned the ball over too much, and because of that, his team is consistently playing from behind. Matt Stafford is one of the more talented playmakers, passers in our league, yet he doesn't play the game the right way. He's been in the league long enough to know how to manage the game, meaning understand down and distance, understand when he can go for it, when he needs to dial it back, understanding score and circumstance. Right now, he doesn't play like he's a quarterback that understands how to play winning football. So if I'm Jim Caldwell, I'm concerned about my franchise guy not playing in a manner that allows us to play at a high level.
Now, he's come out and said, look, Matt Stafford is my guy going forward, but it hasn't been going well. And I think when you look at what they're doing offensively, there are some reasons for that. This is not it's not an explosive offense anymore. And you see his numbers, his yards gone down each of the last few years. And when I go back and look at his college report, and this is what I said about him when he came out of Georgia, Buck, it's interesting to me. He's got an ideal high quick release, got a big-time arm. These are just some snippets. The ball jumps out of his hands. He's at his best on play action, 7-step, where he really can stretch out a defense, deep crossers, seams, skinny posts. He can fit balls in tight spots. But you're talking drive throws down the field, and that's going to be ideally situated where you got a running game you can work off that.
One-on-one on the outside.
They haven't been able to really run the football, so that's been a problem. And when you had the previous coordinator there, who's now gone on to the not Shotton. You had Linehan, Scott Linehan.
Yes, Linehan.
Scott Linehan, who's gone on to the Dallas Cowboys. They were chucking it. They were spreading you out, and they were going to throw it all over the lot. And now they're trying to commit to a running game, trying to be balanced. That hasn't worked. So they really haven't had a formula for him to be successful. The last line of my report, I'll cut to the end here, when he's coming out of college. Overall, I see a lot of Jay Cutler in this player. I think he might need a little bit extra time to develop as an early declarer, so he came out early. So those interceptions, this is something that, valuing the football is something you always talk about. That was an issue going back to college.
Yeah, it's a problem. It's a problem. If you can't take care of the ball, you put your team in a bind, because look, winning the turnover margin is the easiest way to win games. Those who finish +1 win maybe 70 to 80% of the time. So if I'm Matt Stafford, the only thing that I have to do is not give the ball away to the other team. I'm coming off of playing with a defense that ranked first overall last year. I want to make sure that I constantly give my team an opportunity to win, but I can't do that if I'm turning the ball over. And so I continue to bring back this back to the management skills. Can he understand to manage games? Sometimes on 3rd and 8, rather than force the ball into a window, look, dump it down. Check it out, punt, come back and play again. He has to learn how to adapt the way he plays to what his team needs at that moment. He hasn't shown the ability to be able to do that.
When you look at the 3 interceptions, I'll break those down for you real quick. He's got a scramble interception where he gets out of the pocket, just kind of careless with the football, gets picked off. He's got a screen interception where you hope that you're going to get the cut there.
That's unbelievable.
But you got to recognize it. Okay, it's not cut. I got a defender there. I got to dirt the ball. Put the ball down. Live to fight another down. And then the last one, like a back shoulder. He's trying to throw a back shoulder. Miscommunication with Calvin. So those are your 3 interceptions, and he throws in a fumble to boot. So Matt Stafford has to do a better job protecting the football. This team wondering how they were going to respond after that tough, heartbreaking loss where they got kind of hosed by the call against the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah.
Man, Arizona came out and just laid it on them.
Yeah, absolutely laid it on them. And this is not what I expect to see from a Jim Caldwell coach team. I thought that they would have it together. I thought coming out of the Monday night loss to the Seattle Seahawks, I thought they actually would build some momentum because, look, they were toe-to-toe with the team that has been to back-to-back Super Bowls, had an opportunity to win, probably should have won based on the way that last call would have gone. The fact that they could not muster up a solid effort against the Cardinals is troubling.
All right, we're going to play a little game called Who Is. We're going to look at some players, maybe a little bit under the radar, guys that are busting out this year, and kind of give a little bit of background, their scouting history, and who they are as players. And TD, I'll cue it up to you because you're always wanting to know who these guys are. You're always asking us, so we'll give you the floor. Who you want to know about?
Scout School. So I was watching NFL Now Game Day Blitz with Dave Damashek and the man Bucky Brooks right here, and Ike and MJD were going nuts over a play that the Patriots running back made. So I want to know, who is that guy? Who is Dion Lewis?
Dion Lewis, to me, is a guy that came out of Pittsburgh like 4 years ago, a guy that was pretty dynamic at Pittsburgh, but he's undersized, 5'8", 195 pounds, not big enough to be a every down back. But at Pittsburgh, he gained nearly 3,000 yards in 2 season plays, scored 30 touchdowns, kind of a change of pace, quick jitterbug type, prefers to work in space, has some toughness to work inside, but not necessarily a frontline guy. And so I am surprised at his success because he's fallen into this offense, has replaced Shane Vereen, but has given them an upgrade at that slot back position.
Yeah, I was in Philly when we drafted him, Bucky. I didn't have to do a report on him. It wasn't in my area, but I remember all the discussions about him. And one of the things that Andy Reid is kind of known for is he likes going back to the same well. So he goes to Cincinnati and they get Selleck, the tight end. Then they come back and we drafted Jason Kelce. So he's had some success at the University of Cincinnati. Well, then he goes to Pitt, gets a running back, LaShawn McCoy, who transitioned beautifully into what he wanted to do there with the Philadelphia Eagles. So why not go back to that well again? Get Dion Lewis, who's a little bit undersized, but scheme-wise, he fit really what Andy Reid wanted to do in that offense. And of course, Andy Reid moves on. Dion Lewis just never kind of panned out.
Never gets his opportunity.
Never got
a
good fit. And then all of a sudden now you see him in New England, which to me, we'll get into that a little bit later, what they do so well is put players in a position to be successful, know what they do well, and ask them to do it.
That's the one thing about Bill Belichick, and a lot of people talk about their drafts and how they're able to kind of manipulate around the board. It's not that. It's about their ability to acquire players and put them in a position where they can be very, very successful. In fact, they would be more successful in the New England system than if they depart and are elevated to play in another system. We've seen that time and time again. With Dion Lewis, bringing him into the fold, they needed someone to replace Shane Vereen. Shane Vereen was that Kevin Falk role, the guy that would come out the backfield, really run a lot of option routes and flat routes and little things from the backfield to take advantage of the soft spots of coverage. Now you're getting that to Dion Lewis. Dion Lewis is able to find those pockets in the passing game while also giving them a robust 5.0 yards per carry average on the ground. Collectively, he's bringing a lot of skills to the table. Bill Belichick is just sprinkling it in and really finding a way to maximize those talents.
Yeah, he's done a very nice job. All right, that's Dion Lewis. Who else you want to know about, TD?
All right, a lot of overtime games on Sunday this week, and one of them ended with the walk-off pick six from the Falcons cornerback, Robert Alford. Who is Robert Alford?
Look, Robert Alford is a small school player coming out of college, Buck. I believe ran in the low 4.3s, jumped about 40 inches, ultra athletic. It was going to be a little bit of a transition time. You know, they bring him in with True Font, and it's like, okay, now they've got these two young, athletic, talented corners. Can they grow up together? And I think True Font has been the more consistent player than Alford. But Alford is a playmaker, man. He gets his hands on footballs, and we saw him do it in a big-time fashion, a walk-off against the Redskins.
Big-time playmaker. When I watched him initially at the Senior Bowl when he came out, 2013, he was a guy that I thought was super athletic. I thought he was explosive. I thought he had the movement skills that you look for, but he was raw. He was untrained. I thought he'd be a guy that would take a while to really find his way in the league. When I'm looking at him and really looking at him against Washington and also hearing what he said in the post-game presser, he talked about the last pick six being a product of film study, watching all of Kirk Cousins' three-step drops and knowing that this is about to happen. This is the play that I'm about to make because he's coming out, the ball's coming out quick, and trusting his instincts to go make the play. He had 2 interceptions on the day, but the game ender is the one that really clinched it for me. There you see him just breaking on the ball. Look, it helped that the receiver slipped, but it's the awareness to make the catch, stay in bounds, take it to the distance, put it in the paint, seal the deal for the Atlanta Falcons, maintaining their unbeaten mark.
And to me, we've seen this a little bit. We've talked about over the last few weeks when we were talking about Josh Norman and broke him down. So many times you talk about, okay, you want to be good in man coverage. You want to be able to play the man. Look, the best corners play the ball. They don't even play the man. You're in good position, and then be able to see through the wide receiver to the quarterback and play the ball in the air. On that play, his man checks up. His man's running a curl, checks up inside, but he's got his eyes back to the quarterback, sees the ball's a little bit off target, and makes a play.
He does make a play, and that's what you're looking for your young cornerbacks. Look, they have Desmond Trufant on the other side. You wanted the young guy Alford to step up so they then have a dynamic tandem. Dan Quinn has done a great job of simplifying everything for this defense. That allows them to play free and loose, not having to worry about their assignments. But now they can really let that athleticism show. What we're seeing from the Falcons are young guys that can make plays. They're making plays, and it's contagious. Everyone wants to be a part of that. He had 2 picks. That last pick, the pick 6, says a lot about where he's improved at from the previous years.
Yeah, he's come a long way from southeastern Louisiana. All right, TD, you got any more for us?
I got one more for you guys. And the Browns, man. The Browns with a big comeback against the Ravens, and that's because Gary Barnidge made a crazy catch. People call it the best catch of the year. It's more of a lucky catch, but it's a fun catch. Who is Gary Barnidge?
Well, first of all, I labeled that catch the head, shoulders, knees, and toes catch because that was a song I just kept singing over my head watching it. I dug this up. I found my scouting report. I was working with the Browns at the time on Gary Barnidge, Bucky. So let me just run through this for you here. He was a 3-year starter at Louisville. Has desired height, could add another 10 pounds. Player grows on you the more you watch him. In the run game, he competes as an inline blocker, does a good job of tying up and working to stay engaged. He isn't a butt kicker, but he stays on his feet and works to tie up. He's much better working up to cut off. Let's get up to the passing stuff here. He's he build up speed in his routes, has the ability to sink and get out quick. He's adept at boxing out defenders. Does need to be careful with his habit of banging off defenders at the top of his route. He's very reliable. He can reach up or back to pull it in. Overall, the player has the ability to be a starter in the league with all the tight ends in the 2008 class. He could be an excellent bargain on day 2. So it took him a while, Buck. He's been around for a while, but finally got himself in a system where the ball's coming his way, and we're seeing Barnidge start to blossom.
You know, he's a guy that originally platted straight in my own stomping grounds, the Carolina Panthers, a guy that was the tight end 2 and tight end 3, meaning he would come in on those run-heavy formations. He would block. Didn't get a lot of touches his 4 years at Carolina. Moves on, continues to kind of find his way. But this is the year where he really steps out. And part of the reason he stepped out, it has been the emergence of Josh McCown as a playmaker in that offense. In the last 3 games, he's amassed 20 of his 24 receptions with Josh McCown hitting the 300-yard mark in each of those games. He gives Josh McCown a comfort guy, a safety valve in the middle of the field, really settling into his role as kind of that middle of the field playmaker. Because Josh McCown is very comfortable, he is going to continue to get a number of targets between the hashes. That creates other opportunities for other guys.
Yeah, it's one of those deals where you give him a 4th-round grade a million years ago, and you think, maybe a little bit high on that one. But then, hey, just be patient on those evaluations. They end up coming back around sometimes. That's going to do it for that. TD, the Ravens' defense. I don't know if we have anything to show what they've got if you're watching us on YouTube right now, but Buck, they have lost so much from last year to this year. Some of it letting guys go, trading Haloti Ngata. Pernell McPhee ends up leaving, going to the Chicago Bears. But losing Terrell Suggs, this is going to sound kind of hokey, but I really do believe it. That he kind of took over that warrior mentality role from Ray Lewis, and so to me, it's more than what he just gives you as a pass rusher. We know what Terrell Suggs can do rushing the passer. They're not getting after the quarterback right now. We're seeing teams torch him. Josh McCown throwing for 450-plus yards. But it's more than that. It's just that intensity and that leadership and that kind of edge that they've always had a guy that could kind of drive that bus, and right now they don't have one.
Yeah, they're missing the energy guy. They're missing a guy that can really change the fortunes of that defense, that can get them ramped up and get them going. Ray Lewis departs, Ed Reed departs, Terrell Suggs is no longer there. So he's not there because he's injured. Nada's not there. Who is the guy to really set the table, who understands the identity of what the Ravens are and how they play? They need one of those young guys to do it. Maybe it's C.J. Mosley.
I don't think C.J. Mosley
is more active.
It's more vocal.
He's not vocal enough, but maybe his playmaking can do it. Ladarius Webb has been there for a minute. Maybe he can concentrate and make enough plays on the perimeter to get them going. But at some point, someone has to be the point on the sword, the guy that delivers the dagger. Right now, I'm not seeing that when I look at the Baltimore Ravens.
And you have guys, you have a C.J. Mosley, you have a Jimmy Smith, and those guys are kind of playing those secondary roles for your team, and you have that leader. Those guys all play up to that level. They're able to bring the level of play up above everybody, and those 2 players in particular, Jimmy Smith and C.J. Mosley, have been very disappointing to me.
Yeah, they have been disappointing because I expect to see better coverage. I expect them to be able to lock down some of the premier wide receivers on the outside. I'm not seeing that when I watch this team. And I will say some of it is the scheme. Like, they're asking their guys to do too much press coverage stuff.
Yeah.
Too much bump coverage, giving up big plays. Back them off, allow them to see the ball, keep everything in front, concentrate on taking away the big plays, make them drive. If they drive and they're successful, that's a win.
Yeah, we go back to the Patriots. We talked about Dion Lewis and their ability to put players in the proper position. I want to go to some defensive playmakers now because we talk about the Patriots and the Packers, clearly the 2 best teams in the NFL. We focus on Tom Brady. We focus on Aaron Rodgers. I thought both their defenses not only played well yesterday or Sunday, I thought they've played well throughout the entire season. And some playmakers on these teams. Patriots, Jabaal Sheard. Look, Jamie Collins has been playing lights out, but a guy like Jabaal Sheard, who has been an end, he's got that kind of that condition, right? He's only got that real one arm. He's got a little bit of a locked arm. But he's very, very explosive. He's very, very powerful. So now they're moving him around. They put him over a guard. They put him over Leary, and he wore him out rushing the passer, Buck.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is a guy that, like, a couple years ago, like, you saw the talent in display. Coming off the edge, had a knack for getting to the quarterback, the bend and burst, the explosiveness, the get off, the suddenness that you want from a pass rusher. For whatever reason, it didn't take shape under Mike Pettin in Cleveland. Finds a way to make his way to New England. And one thing we talk about with Bill Belichick, he's going to find your blue chip traits, and he's going to put you in a position where you allow those to shine repeatedly. Jabaal Sheard is doing that, and he's doing it in a different fashion because he's not just positioned at inside, outside, down the line, allowing him to really wreak havoc on folks.
All right, we'll go to the Green Bay Packers here now. Clay Matthews, he's had one of the best years he's had in quite some time, and I went back and looked through his report, Buck. This is when he's coming out of college. This is the last thing I wrote on him. Overall, I think this is one of the safest players in the country. Has size, speed, AA, which is athletic ability, motor, the genes, obviously with his family background, and very little tread on the tires. Didn't play a lot at USC. He'd start early at outside linebacker. It has the versatility to slide inside if needed. I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up having the best career of all these USC linebackers because they had Cushing, they had Mauluga, that was Mayava. They had 4 linebackers get drafted that year. But he has emerged as the top one of the bunch.
So if this was a hit or miss feature, that would be a hit for you?
Got that one. I got that one right. The thing that was interesting is because I was in Cleveland at the time, we were a 3-4 team, and we had that debate in the room. We're talking about, is he going to be an outside guy or is he going to be an inside guy? We felt he could do both. It's really kind of what you need. And for the Packers, we've seen him be successful at both spots now.
What I like about Clay Matthews has been the versatility. You talked about seeing him as a guy that can move inside. Dom Capers has really taken advantage of those skills by putting him inside. There we see on an A-gap blitz, him getting up into the face of Nick Foles. It's his ability to be used kind of as that movable chess piece on the board to create chaos at the point of attack. I like the fact that on early downs, he's able to be integral in terms of stopping the run as a Mike linebacker. But then on those other downs, when they go to their sub packages, you have no idea where Clay Matthews is going to line up. Allowing him to be a disruptive force has really helped this Packers defense become one of the best in the league this season.
All right, we talked about two teams that are rolling with some guys making plays on the defensive side of the ball. One team that lost, but I think it's definitely something we ought to point out with what he did the other day. That's Charles Woodson.
Yeah, Charles Woodson has stepped up and has continued to be lights out. He has been a nice leader for them and an outstanding playmaker. And so when I look at this defense, and I think this defense by the end of the year is going to be a top 10 defense. They have nice young pieces, Khalil Mack, Alden Smith. Ray Armstrong is playing good at linebacker. Charles Woodson is steady in the back end, making plays, giving them what they really, really need in the back end.
And when we look at the second interception, the first one he had was nice. It was a nice little pick in the end zone. But the second one, Bucky, to me, that looked like vintage Charles Woodson as a playmaker.
Yeah, it's vintage Charles Woodson. Look at how he's deep. He's lined up about 15 yards deep. Reading the eyes. We talked about last week, reading the mail of the quarterback. Look, Peyton Manning is looking outside. Charles Woodson is already on the move, already heading that way. Makes a play. Soft hands. His ability to snag the balls. Now, I'll say this. In 1998, he was a rookie. It was my last year in the National Football League. We were teammates playing in the same side. He was playing left corner. I was playing right corner. Being able to watch him as a rookie, the confidence that he displayed, the instincts, the natural knack to be able to go get the ball. I hadn't seen a young player play with that kind of confidence and bravado. He is a terrific player. And I'm going to say, his career has exceeded my expectations because at that point in his career, early in his career, he relied solely on his athleticism, didn't put a lot of time in the film room, didn't do a lot of stuff in the preparation phase. But as he's gotten older, he's become a master student. And because of that, 18 years in the league, he's still able to make plays.
One of my first memories of him in the National Football League, I was working for ESPN right out of college, and we were doing a Raider game, and he was playing some in the nickel in that game. I want to say it was against Seattle. I don't remember exactly who it was against. He's in the slot, and he's been known to blitz off the slot and make some plays. Obviously, we go back to the tuck rule. But he's in the lineup in the slot. They motion to try. Obviously, when you're motioning as an offense, a lot of times dictate coverage. You can see what as a quarterback you watch and see what they're in. So instead of knowing he's gonna blitz, so he still goes with the motion. So he goes from right to left, goes with the motion in the slot. They snap the ball, boom. He comes off the slot, sack, big time play. And to me, that just showed you like, okay, maybe the design of the play should have stayed on that side and wanted to come to make sure they had their rush lanes taken care of. But he just instinctually said, you know what? I'm going to sell it more if I go with this motion and come with it later.
You know, one of the things that I learned from watching coaches have to coach him is when you have a special talent, you have to find a way to keep him engaged. And so you talked about his ability to play in the slot. Well, initially, he didn't want to be a slot corner. He wanted to play on the left side. That was the premier side at the time. Because remember, everybody patterned their game after Dion. Dion played on that side. Left corner was always the dominant guy, whatever. Chuck Bresnahan was the defensive back coach at the time. He really eventually elevated to defensive coordinator. And some of those things that you talked about, him running across the field and doing some of those things, they gave Charles the leeway and the freedom and flexibility to make plays. And so it's knowing your personnel and trusting your personnel to make those plays. With a playmaker like Charles Woodson, you need to free him of the restraints of the defense and allow him to make those plays when he gets a hunt. He has been able to do that throughout his career and still doing it at
18 years in, Buck.
I mean, 18 years in the league, still making plays. Hats off to Charles Woodson for being an outstanding player.
All right, before we get to Coach Billick, let's rip through these two rookie quarterbacks. We kind of keep an eye on them every couple weeks. I want to check in on them. Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota. Jameis had a nice win. They ran the ball. They played defense, took a lot of pressure off him, and he played a turnover-free football game. Buck, I want to hit you up on if you had to just say who Jameis Winston is at this point in time? What comes to your mind?
Well, Jameis Winston is a gunslinger, but he reminds me of a young Ben Roethlisberger. And a lot of people will take the comparison from a physical standpoint, but I won't say that. He reminds me in terms of Ben Roethlisberger by looking at how Ben Roethlisberger needs to play or needed to play as a rookie. I believe that's the same way Jameis Winston needs to play. Looking at Roethlisberger's stats his rookie year. Now remember, they still had busts. They still had a strong running game. Look, completed 66% of his passes, 17 to 11 touchdown to interception ratio, but he only really accounted for 187 yards per game passing. Jameis Winston is a little ahead of that pace in terms of yards per game. 77 passer rating, 7-7 in terms of touchdown to interception ratio. And what we've seen when Jameis has been good is because they've been able to keep his pitch count down. Meaning, let's keep his attempts below 25. 25 or fewer, I think we got Jameis in the mix. In the ballpark, it means we're running. We're not putting too much on his shoulders. When he does take advantage of those selected opportunities, I think he's definitely good enough to be a guy that can be your franchise quarterback. But I worry when they get out of sorts and they make him pass 30 or more times, that's not a recipe for him to do it because he's still a little too loosey-goosey with the ball, even though he has made strides this year.
You use gunslinger, and that's why, to me, I go with Eli Manning. I don't know why I never used that comparison at all through the process. Compared him some to Phillip Rivers, kind of a different release, very emotional. Similar size, we saw some Ben Roethlisberger comps. But to me, Eli Manning, because I felt all along, I've said it all along, he's going to be a high-volume guy. He's going to be high-volume touchdowns, high-volume picks, and that's really what we've seen from Eli Manning, especially earlier on in his career. Bucky, I know we talk about protecting the ball. He did a good job this week. But he's going to be 20. He's going to be 20-plus picks. He's going to be, I'm thinking,
that's what
24, 25 touchdowns, 20, 21 picks. I think that's what we're going to get out of Jameis this year.
No, I think that's what you can get out of him. But I think what you're looking for, if you're a Tampa Bay Bucs fan or an official, someone watching him, is he improving on a weekly basis? Is he more careful with the football? Is he finding a way to figure out, this is when I can take the risky throw, and this is when I need to dial it back and really manage the game and make sure that I take the check down and allow my defense and the other parts of the team to win the game. What I'm seeing is he goes as the running game goes. When Doug Martin has good games, Jameis Winston has pretty good games because the running game alleviates some of the pressure on him to really carry that offense. And so as long as Doug Martin is running well, I think you will continue to see Jameis Winston play well in that offense.
I think we got Coach Billick checking in with us here. So let's go through Marcus Mariota real quick. What is Marcus Mariota at this point in time, Buck? Who does he remind you of? What comes to your mind when you think of Marcus Mariota?
I'm going to go to an 80s movie, Top Gun. We talked about it at the top of the show.
We're talking.
He is Iceman to me. Iceman in terms of, look, he's not going to get outside of his comfort zone. He's going to be very safe. He's going to be risk adverse. He is going to eat the ball rather than turn the ball over. So he's very, very conservative with how he plays. And there's nothing wrong with that. But he reminds me a little bit of Alex Smith. Alex Smith in terms of he's going to manage situations. I'm talking about the Alex Smith of late. The Alex Smith that has won a lot of games since the time at the end of his San Francisco 49ers career to what he's done with Kansas City. Meaning, he's going to play the right way. He's not going to force the ball into tight windows. You're not going to have to worry about him being a turnover machine. But you would like to coax him to just be a little more on edge to see if he can fit those balls in, because there are going to be times in games where you need him to fit the ball in tight windows.
He ran a little bit more in this game against the Buffalo Bills, but I'd like to see him run even a little bit more. To me, Jake Plummer is the comparison I'll use because Jake was mobile, but Jake wasn't really much of a runner. Didn't need to run. He ran if the opportunity presented itself, and that's kind of the way we've seen Marcus play so far, winning from within the pocket. That's a tough assignment going up against Rex Ryan, the Buffalo Bills. They did not look sharp. But I think overall, on a whole, through this point of the season, I've been pleased with what he's done. Jake Plummer, that's the name that came to mind for me.
You know, Jake the Snake won a lot of games. Won games down in Arizona. Won some games also with the Denver Broncos. I think with Marcus Mariota, what we're seeing is a guy that has performed a little better than my expectations for sure in terms of taking care of the ball. We did see the pick against the Buffalo Bills. You don't necessarily like that, but for a guy transitioning from a spread offense to more of a traditional style offense, he has been fine. The thing that will continue to challenge Marcus is when they take away some of those comfort throws, some of those easy layups in that offense, can they find a way to get him in a system where he has to make progression reads and he gets to the second and third option quickly and efficiently to allow that offense to sustain itself?
Well, we've touched on a couple rookies here. Now we're going to get to some other quarterbacks, Andy Dalton, talk about Russell Wilson, as well as Matt Ryan, what he's doing with the Falcons. And to do so, we're going to bring in Coach Brian Billick.
And Dalton's going to take it for the touchdown. Wilson is sacked.
That's intercepted. It's going to be a victory for the Falcons. Touchdown on the pick six.
All right, Buck, it's our favorite time of our Monday show, bringing Coach Billick. And last week we mentioned Coach's handle, which is at Coach Billick on Twitter, and went through a couple tweets he had used. And today I'm actually going to let Coach's let Coach's tweets produce this whole entire segment, Coach. So this is what I'm doing. I'm going to give you a tweet that you said.
This is going to get a little scary.
It could get a little dicey, but I think you're going to be pleased with this. Again, if you're not, you need to follow him at Coach Billick. This is something at the end of the Bengals game here, Coach. You tweeted out the way they came back today, coupled with the fight they displayed in a win against the Ravens. By the way, you hashtag Ravens, that nice savvy move there, proves that the hashtag Bengals are the real deal. This Bengals team, Coach, I've said they're making that transition that Tony Romo and the Cowboys kind of made. I see the same thing for Andy Dalton, where it's no longer talking about he's too small in the big moments to us realizing, hey, this guy's pretty good.
Yeah, and we've been waiting for that, haven't we? We talked before about last year in the good run that they had, and there's no shame in losing to New England and Indy of last year and even Pittsburgh, but they lost to Cleveland 27-3. This Cincinnati Bengal team would not do that. And I think short of going and winning those playoff games, because that's what we're all waiting to happen for Andy Dalton, Marvin Lewis, that whole team, playing all but at home against the Seattle team. And more importantly, getting down. Everybody would have appreciated, said, oh, okay, that's fine. You got down. You lost to the two-time participant in the Super Bowl and a very good team that's back on its stride again with Seattle. For them to fight through that and come back the way they did means more than even just winning the game itself. And I think if we look back on what could be a championship run by the Cincinnati Bengals, I think we'll look at this game and say, hey, this might have been that true turning point where they had the confidence to go forward.
Speaking of the confidence, Coach, I want to talk to you and putting on your old offensive coordinator hat about the job that Hugh Jackson has done with that offense. You obviously in Minnesota had a ton of talented players, and trying to keep all those guys in the mix and dialed up. How hard is it to build an offense around the strengths of your quarterback while also incorporating a number of different playmakers into the game plan so they don't get bored?
That's a good question, Bucky, because we see it elsewhere. Down in Atlanta, what do we hear? We hear Roddy White's upset because he's not getting the ball enough. And that's going to be part of it. When you've got to feed a lot of beasts, so to speak, Hugh Jackson's doing a good job. I will say this. For my money, and the best thing I did in the 98 group, and we had some unbelievable guys. Chris Carter, Hall of Fame. Randy Moss could likely be Hall of Fame. Got Robert Smith to hand off to the ball behind him. Had 3/5 of an offensive line that all went to the Pro Bowl with a couple Hall of Famers on it. So the best thing I did was kind of get out of their way. Kind of get that structure, let them play to their strengths. I think Hugh, what I'm seeing, I saw the Daffy Duck, when they put the linemen out there. That's old, man. That goes back to the University of Utah in the late 80s and early 90s, He's doing some things that I would look at and go, you know what? Let's get a little less cute and just let the players win for you and kind of get out of your way. If he gets away some of that cutesy stuff, trying to prove how smart they are, and just becomes more deliberate, he's got the horses to do it, and he's doing a nice job of giving Andy Dalton the latitude to go with the hot hand, to, okay, if they want to double up and take away A.J. Green or move Sherman over to A.J. Green. I said that during the game as well. For those that are following my tweets about partway through, I get, hey, forget this keeping Sherman on the right side. They better travel him with A.J. Green, because otherwise this is going to be a long day. Then yeah, I think he is doing a good job. And Andy Dalton, I think, deserves a lot of credit for spreading the ball around and not falling into the trap of, well, I got to feed it to this guy or that guy. I'm going to find out who the defense really wants to take away, and then I'm going to go to the other guy.
Yeah, Kerry Williams was the target, by the way, there. Once they saw Kerry Williams on A.J. Green, they went there early and often. They had to switch that up. Coach, Andy Dalton, the Cincinnati Bengals, neutral field, Tom Brady and the New England Patriots, how does that go down in your opinion?
Wow, that, because now people, again, they're going to go nuts and beat me up on my in the Twitter sphere.
No, Coach, that means they're listening. That's good. That's good.
Andy Dalton versus Tom Brady. How do you not pick Tom Brady? And obviously Bill Belichick. But there's no question, and they've done, obviously, New England Patriots doing great. but there's no question that this Cincinnati Bengal team is a more talented team. With Geno Atkins in the middle and Carlos Dunlap, secondary solid, got so many places to go. They're staying committed to the run. That's the thing that I look at what Marvin has done, and Hugh Jackson as well, I'll give him credit for. They're staying committed to the run, all right, as much as any team in the league. They're not becoming too enamored with the pass game. They're going to stay with that 30-plus runs, yet they're still one of, if I have to run the numbers for after this weekend, but every 1 in 5 pass is a vertical. And I'm not just saying the sheer number of verticals, but every 5th throw is a big play. You stay committed to the run, 30-plus runs, and yet when you're throwing the ball, every 5th pass is a vertical. That's a heck of a combination. And, yeah, the challenge is, can we overcome the pedigree of the New England Patriots and Tom Brady and Bill Belichick? But it's like my first playoff game in DJ, you remember that. I told the players, because we were playing the Denver Broncos and Mike Shanahan, and I got in front of the players and said, guys, if it comes down to me and Shanahan, we're screwed, because Shanahan's got 2 Super Bowls and I don't have anything, all right? So I'm a liability here. It's going to be on you guys, because I know you're a better team than the Denver Broncos. You're going to have to get above the inadequacies of me, because I lose to Mike Shanahan. And that's exactly what they did. And Marvin's got to let them recognize they're a more talented team is Cincinnati than New England.
You know, Coach, speaking of liabilities, on your Twitter timeline, you talked about the Seahawks offensive line. You said Seattle O-line is going to get Woodson hurt. He can't even get to the peak of his drop, and the hashtag Bengals only sending 4. Pitiful. Tell me what you think about the Seahawks offensive line and what they need to do to rectify the problem.
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge, because when you look at Russell Wilson, I think we're going to see Russell Wilson for the first time in his career be a 500-plus throw. Up to this point, he's been under 450, which is fine because they've played great defense. They've run the ball. That's all he's had to do to be extremely successful. Because the defense isn't quite as good, they're pretty good, don't get me wrong, because they're not running the ball quite as well, because the offensive line is not quite as good, because the receiving core is still fairly pedestrian, he could very likely be a 500 to 550 throw quarterback. And I think Russell Wilson can do that. I think he's spectacular. But if you also look at the numbers and you extrapolate it over 16 games, he's on pace for better than 70 sacks. And he is going to get killed. He does a nice job of staying away from getting hurt when he's running the ball, but he can't protect himself as much when he's getting sacked like that. That's going to be the crucible for this team right now. So I think Darren Bevel, the offensive coordinator, needs to be very strategic about those 500-plus throws that he's now going to have to make, because that offensive line so far just isn't holding up against a pass rush.
Coach, they trade Max Unger in that trade for Jimmy Graham. They haven't really invested there in that offensive line. Tom Cable is one of the best developers of offensive linemen we've seen in the NFL over the last few years. Can you think of a situation maybe in your career where you can believe a little bit too much in your system, or maybe even a particular coach, and you can say, you know what, we can sacrifice some talent here because of the system or coach I have in place? And to me, it's kind of coming back to bite the Seahawks.
I've had an offensive line coach that at times would come in and just pound on the table and say, guys, if we're going to run, pass halfback right, that turn back gap to man responsibility, we can only do it to the left. We can't do it to the right. Because obviously this isn't when Jonathan Ogden got hurt. And it was like, come on, man, I got it. He says, no. Anytime you go past halfback right, we're going to get sacked. You just got to know that. I'm telling you right now. That's hard. But as a play caller, and we went into that last year going, okay, we'll run this protection on the left hash and this protection on the right hash, because we know, and that kills you I'm dog cussing my line coach every time I have to make a call. But he's right in that you got to pick your spots as to how many times you're going to expose your quarterback when you have one of those deficiencies. And right now, that's what I'm alluding to when I say Darren Bevel's got to find the right play calling sequence, the right scheme to, at the very least, account for the fact that that offensive line is not playing well. And right now, Tom Cable's coaching his butt off and hoping he can get it done. Did they overestimate the talent that they had to let a guy like Unger go? And right now, with the lack of production by Graham, that right now looks like a bad trade.
And one thing, too, Bucky, when you look at the division they're in, you're struggling up front. They are in the wrong division.
Yeah, they're definitely in the wrong division to try and come from behind and not be able to have the offensive line in place. But a team that's in a division that is surprisingly competitive are the Atlanta Falcons. And you heaped a little praise on them on your Twitter timeline. Falcons' response after call reversal is a sign of a mature team. Quinn has done a phenomenal job in Atlanta. Talk about the job that Dan Quinn has done with the Falcons.
He has done a great job, and as I point to in the article, part of it is he has final say on the 53. And they've tweaked that defense just well enough. Vic Beasley, good pickup, good quick step. This guy's got an amazing first step. Still not a dominant pass rusher, but they had nothing in Atlanta by way of a pass rush last year. Secondary, they've put some resources now in that secondary. This defense has still yet to be tested, so I'm going to hold judgment a little bit, but there's no question they're doing a heck of a job. And obviously, next to Aaron Rodgers, I'm not sure, although he didn't have a great game this last week, I'm not sure Matt Ryan isn't playing as good a quarterback as anybody in the league. Devontae Freeman, my God, next to Le'Veon Bell, I think the best back, both out of the backfield and catching the ball as well. This guy is something special, and so Dan Quinn deserves a lot of credit for what he's getting done on defense and letting the offense recognizing that, you know, and I've got to also say, Chris, you talked about Tom Cable, his protege last year in Seattle, Chris Morgan, assistant line coach. Well, obviously, Dan Quinn brought him with him to the Atlanta Falcons. He's done a great job with that offensive line. He's reshaped it. It's more physical. They're doing a great job. They're giving him the protection and setting the pace for Matt Ryan and Devontae Freeman. So right now, Atlanta, they're very much for real. And when you look at their schedule, not necessarily challenging. So a team that has the potential to get that momentum and continue to roll, they're very much for real.
Coach, you alluded to the fact about Devontae Freeman being just behind Le'Veon Bell in terms of his ability to run and also make plays on the backfield. Talk about as a play caller and as a coach, kind of discovering a guy that you had kind of pegged as your number 2 running back, but then an injury to Tevin Coleman allows him to have the opportunity. How do you determine when to say, hey, you know what, this is going to be my starting running back, and we'll figure out the rest of the running back rotation down the road?
Yeah, you better, and you better do it quick because you can't bypass talent like that. One of the best guys I've ever been around in that regard was Denny Green. I thought Denny would make an excellent general manager when he was done coaching. Had the best eye for personnel of any coach I've been around. And I think Dan Quinn coming out of that Pete Carroll mentality and having that larger perspective, and I think Dan, he's an outstanding coach. I tried to hire him twice. This guy's got a great feel for the game. And to use a player like Devontae Freeman, Denny Green, I guarantee you, would have been in my office the first day when I was coordinating for him going, you do what you want, but I'd get the ball in this guy's hands a whole bunch. I don't care what our structure was. I don't care who we had in front of him. He has that rare ability. He is so physically punishing for a little guy when he gets downhill, but he is a legitimate receiver. And I don't mean just, okay, the extended handoffs, let's hand him the ball, let's get him a little flat pass. This guy can do things down the field like Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell's legitimate down the field. He's running ins and crosses and posts and sluggos and all that good stuff. This guy is quite a find.
Yeah, Devontae Freeman, somebody me and Bucky enjoyed watching, went and watched him in that national championship game, Coach. You've got an article coming up on NFL.com where you talk about the relationship between Matt Stafford and Coach Caldwell, where that goes from here. So if you're listening or watching, be sure to check that out. But as I say goodbye, Coach, I want to give you one opportunity to address a team here. And I'm going to say, you're always good at giving these speeches in front of the group. So you've got the Atlanta Falcons, right? We just talked about them. They've now wiped out the entire NFC East. So they beat all 4 teams. They beat them in the first 5 weeks. So you're in the locker room. You're the coach of the Atlanta Falcons. You've just finished off the NFC East. Give me a good line. What are you telling the team about that accomplishment?
Well, we all grew up with it. How about them Falcons? You know, take a page out of Jimmy Johnson's page. And the good thing about that is by going through the division like that, believe me, you're knocking off these chits now to where you remind that team, let's remember that when we have to go back into the NFC East and play one of these teams in the playoffs. We dominated them. We know how to beat them. Let's go attack the rest of the league. Let's knock off the rest of the NFC South now and put this thing away.
All right, Coach. Well, again, you brought the goods as you do each and every week, Coach. We look forward.
Oh, quick question, Coach.
Go ahead.
You're Andy Reid, and you're having to deal with the loss of a terrific runner in Jamal Charles. What do you tell your team to keep the confidence up that, look, we still can turn this around without our best guy?
We've talked about it all the time. You got to set that groundwork in training camp. We're going to lose people, guys. We know we are. And we don't know who. If we did, we could obviously prevent it. But everybody in this room is going to have to at some point step up. There can't be anybody, one person, quarterback included, that if they go down, we shut this thing down. Now, this is a big hit for them. I watch Kansas City now. I said this a while ago. That loss that they had in the playoffs 2 years ago to Indianapolis, that left a mark now. That left a scar that I'm not sure they totally haven't come back from. And I think we may see, I think they're going to have a tough road ahead. Yeah, the big challenge there for Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs. Well, Coach, we appreciate it, and we'll see you back here next week. Sounds good, guys. All right, that's Coach Brian Billick. Bucky, we had a full show today, got a lot covered. Coach Billick, always fun. We're really pumping up his social media.
Well, now, you know, like every time he comes on, I feel like I learn so much. You had the opportunity, obviously, to work with him and work for him. I didn't have that, but every time I corner him in the halls, I'm always bugging him about football stuff. He drops some nice little nuggets there that I can digest.
Yeah, I always enjoy it when I would see him in the hallways. It was always young man. I don't know if he gives that to TD or any of the other guys, but it's always, how's it going, young man? Have a good day? All right, young man. Well, see you later. So Coach was big on the young man comments. Well, fellas, good job behind the glass. We have another episode coming up. You can catch it on Wednesday, as well as we'll have some video shorts as we've been doing lately. You've been listening. You've been watching Move the Sticks. We'll see you soon.
Thanks for downloading Move the Sticks with Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks. For more, go to NFL.com/podcasts.